Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. The World Series starts tonight in Toronto. Sounds pretty good. Feels pretty good. Yesterday was media day. It was a circus. Got all the shots from down there, all the content from there. Got some great newsy bites. As of right now, the most annoying part of doing this show at this time is that I'm going to do an entire show, and at the very end of it, that's when they'll announce the playoff roster. So I still got to do some guessing. At least we found out who the Game 1 starting pitcher was, and already I was wrong. So maybe I'm about to go for like a generational 0 for 3 on playoff roster predictions. So yesterday, we're waiting to hear from Bo Bichette. We're waiting to hear from John Schneider. We're excited to hear from Trey Savage and how he's going to handle being Game 1 starter and just what a story he is, right? Jumping every single rank of minor league ball this year, starting in high A and finishing the season as the starter for Game 1 of a World Series. Someone who no-hit the Yankees in a postseason game. It's incredible, right? Like his perspective on what the rest of his career will look like is going to be very interesting because this start is damn near unprecedented. But the main draw, the biggest attraction, of course, is the guy who has, technically the biggest contract in all of baseball. Technically, right? All the deferred money. But the face of the game. The face of the game for the last couple of years, and you've seen it the way that Major League Baseball markets itself, is not Aaron Judge. It's not Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's not Juan Soto. It's Shohei Ohtani. And Shohei Ohtani, at one point in time, was rumored to be a Toronto Blue Jay. This is a market where people don't really forgive and forget all that easily. We're seeing that right now with Mitch Marner's departure. We saw it with 20 years to heal wounds with Vince Carter. And frankly, like a PR job that you'll maybe never see again in terms of the way that relationship got managed and improved. But with Shohei Ohtani, a guy who people in this city, people in this country, at one point thought was on an airplane to come sign here, I thought would be one of the prevailing stories of this World Series. I thought that this would be one of the prevailing stories with this market. And to me, the story of Shohei Ohtani with the Toronto Blue Jays is what a non-story it is. They say the best revenge is living well, and I guess this is the way that we mature as a market, as a country of sports fans, because I don't feel the bitterness going into this series from Blue Jays fans towards Shohei the way that I kind of expected it to as the build was going to happen over the last few days. Yeah, Shohei's not exactly the most hateable guy, all right? He's very quiet. He's humble. He's respectful. He's so unique. Again, he just had a 3-home run game in which he pitched in, and he was throwing 100 miles per hour. He's not the face of hateability, right? It's not as easy. The Dodgers are not a rival to the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe that will change after this series. But I'm genuinely a little surprised that none of the conversations with my friends, none of the conversations to me in the DMs, nothing that I've really seen on Twitter or social media has been about the Blue Jays trying to enact revenge against Shohei Ohtani or trying to prove Shohei Ohtani was wrong. Yeah, again, he already has a World Series championship, but you could make the case like, hey, maybe he did choose wrong if Toronto ends up winning this one. It's 1-1. Who knows? Maybe he's better off being with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Whatever. We have been bitter. It's true. I think most sports fans are, right? Like, I just watched the Oklahoma City Thunder play, and they just are coming off of a championship. Like, they just won. They're in their barn. They're celebrating their championship. They're raising the banner, and Kevin Durant is in town for game one, and they're booing Kevin Durant. And I would anticipate that Shohei Ohtani is going to get some boos. But what this really illustrates to me is, again, the belief in this baseball team by the fan base and the overwhelming joy surrounding it. And that when you have those things, again, living well, you're not as hyper fixated on what could have been and what you should have and looking in somebody else's backyard. And yeah, I don't know. Some people feel like Shohei Ohtani played the Toronto Blue Jays. I, looking back on it, don't quite feel it to that degree. Again, he deferred so much money with the Dodgers. He could have taken such a more player-friendly contract that looking back on it, it doesn't necessarily feel like he needed them as a suitor, that maybe the interest was real. But really the only soundbite that I saw yesterday that was about Shohei was John Schneider making a little tiny joke about him returning the merch that the Blue Jays gave him during the pursuit. So I'm curious to see what it looks like. Absolutely. I think that Shohei will get boos, but that also does happen for the best player on opposing teams. But the story here is that I really don't feel the vitriol towards this player that I'm accustomed to from a market that is more than happy to lambast and frankly just bitch about in general players who they feel have slighted them. And I thought Shohei Ohtani, being one of the genuinely greatest players to ever hit the field, him facing this team with these kind of stakes, that it would be one of the prevailing storylines. And I'm about to talk to Adam Ottavino, and we're going to preview this World Series, and it just doesn't really feel like much. It really doesn't. I'm surprised. Bigger story is Trey Savage is opening the World Series as the starting pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. So he's the youngest World Series opener in 78 years. 78 years. We're talking, we're talking old-timey baseball there 78 years ago. That's when guys would do this. This is an incredible feat. What an accomplishment. And I am a little surprised that it wasn't Kevin Gausman. I said yesterday that I thought that Gausman would get the ball and that the 20 pitches that he threw in Game 7 would likely amount to a throw day and that they wouldn't be overly concerned about it. But I'm going to say good for Kevin Gausman because he's clearly a hyper-competitive player. He is someone who is dying to get the ball, and one of the faces of this franchise right now, one of the faces of this run. He's been incredible. And clearly, he had the wherewithal and the maturity to talk with his staff, to tell his coaches exactly how he was feeling, and didn't act selfishly in wanting to pitch Game 1 of the World Series, which, again, is an incredible honor and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I am a little surprised, but the secondary thing that I'm, I guess, a little surprised in is, and maybe shouldn't be based on the way Trey Savage has pitched this postseason, is how it doesn't feel controversial at all. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, are you going to be scared of the young man on the mound? Like, no, he's kind of nails. And maybe it's that he hasn't really faced downtimes. Again, all he's done is jump levels in the minors this year. He must think baseball is the easiest sport. I've had countless debates with friends and family about what sport is the hardest, right? What is the hardest thing to do? And hit a baseball always comes up. But yeah, be able to throw the pitches that Trey Savage does is like, that's not a very easy physical accomplishment. And yet here he is with the fortitude to just go stand on a mound by himself in front of a crowd of 50,000 people and deliver the moments that you've gotten so far. And maybe because, again, he hasn't seen what it's like to truly stumble at the professional level, that he exudes this incredible amount of confidence. But I think that's kind of the way that most people feel. I'm also not too worked up about it because you're in a spot where if you're going to win this thing, it's more than likely that you're going to end up having both those guys pitch twice anyways. And the assumption is, yeah, Gausman goes tomorrow. Interesting stat that I want to talk to Adam about is Dodgers haven't faced a lot of splitters in the postseason. Just over 3%, 47 pitches all postseason that they've seen splitters. It's because the natural thinking is, well, when you have those two guys lined up and they throw similarly, again, Trey Savage different because of where the release point is, it being so high, that hitters can get a little bit comfortable. That's why when you've got righties and lefties, sometimes staffs like to break the guys up to be able to give you a different look. It's why we've talked at nauseum about overusing guys out of the bullpen and giving too many looks, and that even if you don't get hits off of relievers, those accumulate because the batter eventually is able to adjust to what they're seeing and prepare themselves better for what is coming. And yet, I don't really get that sense, but the guy who will know a lot better than I do is Adam Ottavino. Again, 15 years in the major leagues, host of Baseball and Coffee on YouTube, which is doing its World Series preview today after this show. So you can get an even extended look at it with all of the breakdowns that Adam does. And I've said it on this show before. It's a genuinely one-of-one piece of content. It is really must watch. I think it's as good as any baseball show that is out there right now. It's brand new, and it's already absolutely flying. Adam Ottavino joins the show. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I got to get one of those hats. I got to get that hat.
Oh, we will make that happen.
That hat is a great hat. That is a truly nice one. Okay, so I do want to get into some of the other stuff in the series, but I do want to start with the pitching with you. So Trey Savage gets game one. He's a guy that you and I have talked about now a couple of times. But I want to start with the point that I was just making about the splitter and how the Dodgers really haven't faced that pitch throughout this postseason run. And again, this is a world-class team. They're stacked with great hitters. But do you view that as an advantage for Toronto in these first couple of games, the fact that this is not something that they have gotten to face so far in the postseason?
I think I don't know about a full advantage, but it's definitely a good thing for the Jays. You're looking for ways to navigate this lineup. It's a deep lineup. They're going to be communicating with each other well. They're going to be well prepared for the most part. But I love the unfamiliarity, always. Whether it's just a pitch type like a splitter or even the angle, obviously, that they're going to see tonight from Savage. It's all the better that they haven't seen it before. So anytime you can hit them with a little bit of something that they're not accustomed to, you'll take it for sure this time of year.
Are you a little surprised that Gausman isn't starting in this series? Like, again, he threw 20 pitches. It was actually 19. 19 pitches that he threw in Game 7. It's 4 days off before Game 1. We saw what ended up happening with Logan Gilbert in the series prior, where his velo was down. The stuff didn't quite look the same. But it was a little bit more intense in that Game 5 against the Tigers, and he did throw a couple of innings versus Gausman's one. What does that communication look like between a pitcher and its staff in terms of coming up with that decision and how you're feeling?
Yeah, that's the most important thing this time of year is the open lines of communication, the trust that's developed over the course of the 8 months, and honestly, years prior in this situation with Gauds and the staff. I had him penciled in for Game 1 myself. I'm a little surprised he's not pitching Game 1 given the workload and the rest that he's had in between. But at the same time, I think it's probably the right thing to do if they're doing it. He's going to have to pitch twice, more than likely to win this series. You need him effective both times. He's thrown a lot of baseball. Even though it was 20 pitches in Game 7, they're Game 7 relief pitches. They're a little bit different level of stress. It was an interesting inning. There was some walks. There was some navigation going on. That was an intense inning. So even though it was 20 pitches, it's not always necessarily correlated directly with the amount of stress you might have, gone through to accomplish that. So I'm a little surprised, but at the same time, I think it makes sense. Pitch the guy who's on the right amount of rest. Make sure Gausman's good to go. You're going to need them both later anyway. And you'll pivot. But while you can line them up, you might as well have a fresh guy going.
Yeah, I think that the big other piece of this is it doesn't feel controversial because the way that Trey Savage is pitched, right? Where he's been so good, so lights out that the decision to bump Gausman back a day doesn't feel like it's really hurting this team. But do you think that, again, it hasn't been a story so far, really? Like, again, they did lose the first 2 games to the Mariners, but it wasn't like Gausman got tattooed in Game 1. I guess they did make some adjustments and hit Savage harder than he's been all series. But do you view that in any way as an advantage for a team like the Dodgers to see 2 guys who profile similarly in back-to-back games?
Typically, yes. Typically, that is a big factor. Even within the same game, you bring like a similar style pitcher in back-to-back off of another guy that they've seen all game. That can be a recipe for disaster. But these guys, and we've talked about it a little bit before, although they both are fastball split, it's different. It's a different angle. They play a little bit of a different game. They're learning from each other. But I do feel like you saw it in the Yankees series, right? Gausman pitched Game 1 was quite effective. Savage was even better in game 2. So I don't think it's necessarily going to play out as an advantage, but typically it would be. I just think that these guys are, there's subtle differences with them that allow them to stay protected a little bit in this situation.
And when it comes to Savage starting this, do you think that there's any part of the Blue Jays decision making that is the Dodgers have literally never seen this guy before? That sure, the rest, yes, we had Gausman penciled in, but the advantage of having a guy who, as we've talked about, cannot be emulated by the trajectory machine based on how high the release point is, and trying to scout him and going, well, all right, I guess we can watch film, but none of our guys have faced him. You're going to go across and you're going to look at your stats before, and there's nobody that's had an AB against Shohei Savage on that roster.
No, I mean, I'm sure they've talked about it already. They're a smart team. They get ahead of these things. They probably pulled them up on the trajectory they have in LA or whatever they had to do to get a little sense of this. But I think the Blue Jays are incredibly confident with Savage on the mound, and why wouldn't they be? They know they have the surprise factor, the angle factor that's unaccounted for the first time you face him. He's been unflappable. Clearly, he has a whole stable of veterans behind him in the rotation that are juicing him up, getting his mind right, and it's been working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have no problem pitching him in this game. I actually love it. I think it's great. It's a good factor, and on top of it, he matches up on paper pretty good with some of the Dodgers. He's great versus left-handed hitters. 3 of their best hitters are lefties. Ohtani, Freeman, and Muncy. If you can control those guys, you have a much better shot. So, I definitely like that factor as well.
Well, yeah, and I think that you're going to have to get some length from him, right? And he and Gausman, just like the long-term trajectory of the series in terms of them being able to get looks at your bullpen. But you mentioned those 3 lefties. Like, Toronto's pretty thin in that regard coming out of their bullpen. They don't have a ton of guys that you really feel uber confident leaning on in those spots. It looks like it is going to be Mason Fluharty as their number 1 leverage guy against lefties. He had his most famous outing of the season against Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts. The reason why this game is here in Toronto is because he came in with the bases loaded and struck them both out. And it was like a welcome home moment, right? Like a welcome to the big leagues, Mason Fluharty. That's about as good as it can get. But when you look at this, the Jays have been pretty reluctant to use Eric Lauer in this series. Brendan Little ran into trouble now twice against the Mariners, and I think there's even questions as to whether or not he'll be on the postseason roster after walking the 2 batters after conceding the home run. So when you look at this series, do you think that Toronto is going to, clearly they're going to have to use 2 of these lefties. It can't just be Mason Fluharty the entire time. Are you seeing something from Brendan Little that says, you know what, this kind of does disqualify you from leverage? Are you starting to look more to Eric Lauer? What is your opinion on Toronto's lefties out of the pen?
I think Schneid's is going to have to trust Little. If he's on the roster, if they decide to go with him, I think they're going to have to trust him a little bit. He's there for a reason. Shohei in particular struggles with low slot lefties with sinkers. He's on paper a pretty good matchup for Shohei on top of Fluharty as well. So those 2 guys, they're going to need them to get through that order at that part of the order at some point. Ultimately, he doesn't have, Schneider doesn't really have 3 guys he's going to ride the whole way through. If they're going to win this series, he's going to have to mix and match and trust everyone. I know it's hard to do. I know it's tough to swallow for fans, but they're probably not going to get to the finish line if they overexpose everybody else in lieu of pitching those guys at all. I looked at Fisher as another possibility to handle some lefties. His arsenal's a little more set up for lefty matchups. He's got a little cut to his fastball. Both of his breaking pitches break down really hard. So that's another alternate option. But I think Lauer is more of the long relief, guy in this situation. He has the high arm slot. I don't think that plays very well against the top of this Dodger order, even the lefties. But he's the type of guy that's going to come in and soak up innings if they need, especially now that I think they're pivoting to using Bassett a little bit more in these big leverage situations. So that takes away one of your long guys. You're going to need Lauer to be that guy. So for me, I would keep Little on the roster and I would trust him. But the big key is kind of what his work has been like the last few days. Is he getting his head right? Is he, looking good? Are they feeling more confident in his attack plan? And if you have to feel that vibe as the manager, if that's the case, you trust him. If not, then okay, maybe you have to go another direction. But it definitely puts you behind the 8 ball because you're going to need a guy with his skill set in this series.
Yeah, it sucks because the position that you're in now is, so you trusted the guy to go in against the heart of the Mariners order in what was essentially, it didn't end up being a must-win game, but it's as important of a game as the season. Like, you're up 2-1, and you've got an opportunity to go up 3-2 in the series, it's difficult for me to believe that the manager is now going to lose faith in him entirely heading into the following appearance that they would need him. There is a case, as you just outlined, for him against Shohei Ohtani. But my God, what a risky proposition for a manager in terms of taking heat. Like, again, he's already in the World Series, so maybe there's a little bit of added equity to this. But if it's Brendan Little that kills you 3 straight times and he costs you a World Series game and he cost you winning a Game 5 against the Seattle Mariners, I just don't know how John Schneider explains that.
It's hard. I get it. It's just really hard to be in that seat. You always think about the consequences of things when you're out there on the field. You try to block those things out, but you always think about, what if I'm wrong? What if I screw up? Honestly, when you're in the arena, you need to try to block all that out. I could see a scenario where maybe he doesn't go to him early in the series, but the reality is, as the series creeps on, and if the Blue Jays are where they need to be in the series, they're going to have mucked it up, and there's going to be a lot of pitchers used, and guys are going to start to head towards that overexposed situation as we go. That's the lane to then fire a guy back in there, because all of a sudden you have somebody they haven't seen yet. So, it doesn't mean he's going to fire him in there game 1-run game tonight. But I think it's a situation where it's a weapon that they want to use. Maybe they're a little afraid to use, but they might be forced to use, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. It seems pretty clear as of right now that the trust tree for the Blue Jays bullpen is use Louis Varland every single game. Never give him any rest. Just send him out there. Ask him to throw 100. They want to lean on Jeff Hoffman more as the closer. I think Hoffman kind of silenced a lot of doubts about where he's at right now with striking out the side in a Game 7 to close out a series and having 5 innings pitched with 10 strikeouts in the CS. So they're feeling great about where he's at. What I find interesting is that, we're a little unsure in terms of the way that they're going to use the lefties. I think that we're actually a little unsure about Sir Anthony Dominguez based on the way that they utilized him at the very end. And then after that, it's a few wild cards. But the guy you mentioned, Chris Bassett, came in 2 relief appearances and looked great. And listen, I just don't think of a guy like him as a high leverage, get you out of big spots guy, because all I've ever known him as is a starting pitcher. But do you like him in that role? Do you think that this is something that, hey, you're not just going to use him once or twice potentially in the series? You might extend that a little bit more, and he might actually be one of the back end bullpen guys that you're relying on a few times in the series.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you're so right. I don't think of him in that way typically either. He's a workhorse starter, innings-eating type starter, one of those
locked
guys.
to get you 100 pitches.
Yeah, absolutely. A crafty guy, going to find a way to keep going in games, and that's his game. But, having known Bass a while now and having played with him, I know how hungry he has been for some playoff moments and some playoff success. He's had some pretty big heartache in the playoffs and big games going back, and also being passed over for games, not getting any playing time really when he was with the A's in their playoff runs. So he's been thirsty to compete, like really thirsty to compete. And you saw his stuff tick up a little bit in that relief role the other night. He's throwing 95-mile-an-hour sinkers, and then he's got that 72-mile-an-hour breaking ball. It's a totally different dynamic than other people are bringing out there in that moment. When you're typically facing a 7th, 8th, 9th inning reliever, everything's hard, right? It's a power game. It's a I better get ready. I better get going. This guy's going to strike me out. He's going to wipe me out. Bassett's bringing that starting know-how to that spot. So it's like he has his velocity to kind of also make you respect it, but at the same time, he's got all that craftiness. He can downshift 20 miles an hour, and there's no doubt that he's focused and locked in and wants the ball in those spots. So if I'm a manager, I'm always looking for the guy that's literally foaming at the mouth to get into the game. And honestly, that is Chris Bassett. So I love the fact that he got in there in that game. I was so nervous for him. I really wanted him to get it done. He gets it done, and now I think he's earned himself some more opportunities here.
Yeah. One of my favorite visuals from this entire run will be Bassett walking off the mound after getting that final out in the 8th and doing like the double fist pump and the joy that he was exuding, the intensity that he was exuding in that moment. And that is one of the things that I've done a lot of reflecting on this run and about this baseball team and what has made them special. And it's hard not to point to the mix of players that they have on this roster and the balance of personalities, where you've got guys who are like super fun loving that get along with everybody like Ernie Clement, but also having these 2 veteran pitchers. And I'll throw 3 because I'll throw Gossman in there. But I don't think about him as hyper intense as Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett. But like you played with Bassett, and I'm curious what it is like to have a guy like that around who is that intense, who is that hyper focused, but also seems to not rub people the wrong way, because that's usually the case with people like that, right? Is when there's like when you sweat every little thing, eventually people are like, dude, shut up. Just leave me alone. Give me a little bit of space. But he doesn't seem to have that quality.
No, that's not his way of going about things is not abrasive. Like he's very inclusive. It's all just fun. Like he loves to compete, genuinely just loves to compete. It doesn't matter what it is. I mentioned before showing up at 1 o'clock, to Citi Field before, and it's Bass's start night, and he's already been there in a full sweat playing ping pong versus somebody for an hour, because like he just wants to compete, and like he knows how to get himself in the right mind frame. I also think clubhouse dynamics, like he's the type of guy who's not afraid to give a little ribbing to the star player or to the manager or to whoever. And it kind of does cut the tension a lot of times between older guys and younger guys in the clubhouse when you have somebody in there that's kind of bringing everybody down to a level playing field. And I truly believe that Bassett, is at a stage in his career where he's really, really good at that. So that helps tie the clubhouse together. His personality is great for infusing Max into there. Max gets to be himself. Scherzer, obviously, and I do think the big picture of looking at this club and how it's really manifested itself into the team we're watching now, I do give a lot of credit to these veteran starters. I'll even throw Barrios in there. They have a good culture. It's been amazing for Savage. He's pitched some of the biggest games of the year, and these are the guys that are in his ear. Bieber as well. They have a whole crew of these guys. They're in his ear, telling him how good he is, telling him to keep it simple, reminding him of the right things. They're also studying the teams together. I thought they adjusted to the Mariners lineup better than the Mariners adjusted to the Blue Jays lineup. So all these things are great. The game is so about measurables now and young arm talent and this stuff. But when you get to this time of year, having some of the veteran know-how and some of that natural competitor blood flying around in the clubhouse is nothing but a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that we've touched on before, but you're seeing this around professional sports in general, is leagues are getting younger, and that's great. There's a lot of, speed. There's a lot of skill. But at times I do wonder if we lose a little bit of that benefit with a lot of these teams that have decided to go super young, super quick, and not have a stable of veterans that are around that can do some of the things that you're talking about. So the other vet is Scherzer, who after the lengthy layoff comes back in this series and looks awesome. Like puts together basically a vintage performance. Shane Bieber, coming off of an outing where he didn't have the good stuff, had a very good outing in the series. Pitched exactly like the guy that you were expecting him to. But overall, like in the 3 starts that he's had, I would say that 2 he's probably not happy with, 1 he absolutely is. Where are you at in terms of game 3? Like, I know that this is a far look ahead, but do you lean towards either guy starting in that spot? Like, do you think that there's actually a case right now to put Max Scherzer in that 3 hole?
Ooh, I really hadn't thought about this too much yet. I just assumed Bieber would probably pitch 3 and Max would probably pitch 4. I think where Max is at physically at this point in his career, we don't really understand what's going on with the thumb thing, how much that affects him in terms of recovery time and stuff. They're looking at one outing from Max probably. So game 4 makes sense to me, given then maybe Bieber can come back around and contribute in a game 7. I don't know if that's even realistic, but those are the 2 guys that they're going to need to get something out of, obviously, and they don't have the unfamiliarity factor. Like everybody's seen them, as great as they are. They're going to have to pitch really, 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 really well and locate really, really well. But I have confidence in both of them. I did think Max was impressive. 22 days off or whatever he had, came out. And I said it beforehand. One thing with Max you never have to question is the focus and the attitude and, the way he's going to compete. That's on full display. It's now legendary, obviously. But that's the difference with some guys. Like rust is not going to be an excuse for a Max Scherzer. So I think it's fine. Let him lay off and let him fire one time with all he's got in that 41-year-old body.
Yeah, the intensity, there's no doubt. The clip that's been flying around social media the last couple of days is of him against the Phillies and Joe Girardi asking for him to show the hair, and the umpires running their hands through his greasy, balding head, and him flipping out and undoing the belt buckle and screaming at their dugout. And I'm like, you know what? Brave of the Phillies to try to get under his skin that way, because, he just looks like an absolute lunatic out there at times. Okay, so broader one for you. What's the biggest point of curiosity for you heading into this series?
How are they going to hit Snell and
Yeah.
Yamamoto? I know that they have the best offense in the postseason so far. They certainly seem to have the right approach, the contact approach, use the whole field approach. I love the way the bottom of the order performed in the past series. But those two guys are at the peak of their powers right now. And they just faced a team I don't think is as good a team, to be fair, offensively at this moment, the Brewers. But the Brewers are also an aggressive team. They took an aggressive approach in game one, game two of their series versus these two pitchers, and it did not work. It completely backfired and actually set the Dodgers up for the sweep because they didn't have to use any of their bullpen.
Yeah.
So to me, how are they going to get get to these guys? How are they going to get runs on the board against these guys and get into the Dodger bullpen? Because there's no doubt they'd rather face any guy out of that bullpen than any of the four starters.
Yeah, the Dodgers bullpen has a staff ERA in the postseason of 4.88. Their starting pitchers 140. 140. Yeah. Pretty good. And I think that's a great point, though, about how they're going to be able to work counts. And I don't think that the Blue Jays are a team that is like they had this moment against the Mariners where John Schneider talked about throwing uppercuts and hitting more home runs. And it worked, right? Like they had this game 3 where all of a sudden they started hitting bombs and they put pressure on the scoreboard that way. But when I think about the Blue Jays, it's no strikeouts and it's ball and play and build pressure throughout innings on starters and force managers to make a decision. But to your point, like that is what I think probably the scariest thing for me is when I watched the Brewers play when they came to Toronto. And I was there watching, I'm sitting in the stands with my buddy, and our observation was, this is the NL Blue Jays. Like, not as good of a starting staff, right? Better bullpen, but not clearly the staff. They basically had one starter in that series. Blue Jays obviously are going to be able to lean on 4. But I guess, yeah, when you say that the Blue Jays, they're hitting better right now, there's no question about it, right? Like, they're hitting nearly 300 as a team, and I think the major storyline of the series is how does the 140 starters ERA match up against a team that's hitting 300 throughout their lineup, and which one of the immovable object, that whole saying, which one ends up bending. But the way the Brewers profiled and the way that they hit in that series, do you think that is indicative in any way of what Toronto is going to look like in this one?
No, because I think Toronto's a lot hotter right now. Milwaukee was not looking good going into that series. To be fair, Chourio is probably the only player who had good at-bats against the Dodgers.
And
the rest of them were they were lost, and he was hurt. He was compromised, you're right. Yelich looked awful. He's in a horrible slump. Contreras wasn't in a great rhythm. Even Vaughn, they figured him out pretty quick. They just didn't have any answers, whereas the Blue Jays, they're kind of clicking on all cylinders offensively, and they have a lot of options. Bo Bichette gets back in the mix. I like their chances a lot more than I did the Brewers' chances going in. It's more so I'm just thinking about the strategy of it all. Like, do you try to hope that the pitcher digs himself a hole and try to get him out of there with a pitch count approach? See a lot of pitches, or do you try to attack knowing that these guys want to be in the strike zone? So it's just a choice that I'm curious to watch. It might not be every hitter having the same approach, but overall the team will have a general idea of how they'd like to beat them, and I'm just curious to watch what that looks like tonight.
Well, yeah, and it's especially interesting too because Toronto is one of the cool things about their depth this season has been their lineup flexibility, right? Like their ability to kind of mix and match for whether they faced a lefty or a righty. And if you get Bo Bichette back tonight, like if that's actually happening, I don't know how you're not tempted to just throw him right into the mix against Blake Snell and add another righty bat who can perform against elite pitching. Because I was making this point yesterday, but the reason why I thought there's just no way they're going to leave him off is A, because if he re-aggravates the injury, you're not worried about losing him for a next series because there isn't one. But B is this is the time of year where you want to have the best players facing the best because that's what this is going to be. And I don't know if Springer's knee is 100% for him to play in the outfield. Obviously, Bo isn't 100%, but they're letting him take ground balls at second base. He still looks pretty clunky to me running the bases. Like seeing Bo move around, he's obviously gutting it out, but there's no one in their right mind that thinks that he's going to have great, like he's not moving well, flat out. And so the idea that he's going to play second base and be able to move laterally side to side and make a diving play and not have that hurt him, I think DH is the only option. The question becomes, do you sacrifice that outfield defense to get his bat in the lineup right away for this matchup and just say, hey, like if you can do it now, then we've got something, but immediately test it. Don't get cute and try to wait.
I'd be tempted to wait. I'd be on the other side of it. I just have too much experience with even myself being desperate to be a part of something and not really being 100%
Yeah.
and trying to pass it off like I am. So I don't know that he is or isn't, but I'd be tempted more to use him as a targeted pinch hit at the beginning, at least, because I'm a little worried that as soon as he gets on base, I'm gonna have to pinch run for him anyway. And then if I'm DHing him, he's on base early in the game, I could get exposed pretty fast. And I'm just worried. I'm not 100% sure. I've been watching the videos as well, just like you. To me, doesn't look perfect. It makes me a little nervous. Things have been going well. So to me, I don't know. I'd use him as a pinch hitter first game. That's my feel on it right now. But I'm not in the clubhouse, so I don't have all the information.
I can tell you he is desperate because when they had their interviews after the CS win, he immediately started saying, "I'm ready to go. I'm playing in the World Series. Like, I'm there." And then yesterday, his manager speaking at the podium, they asked him, like, "Hey, is this an issue of like where to use him in the lineup or whether he's going to be on the roster at all?" And Schneider's answer was a little bit of both, which means that the Blue Jays are clearly a little torn on this decision as to whether or not to use him. But the player is dying to get in and forcing the issue, and he's out there running the bases. He's out there taking BP. Like, he knows the cameras are out there. He knows that the world is watching him perform right now and waiting to hear with bated breath whether or not he's going to be in this series. But I think that there's a couple things. One, obviously, his health that you just went over. But is there any part of you, because we're a hockey country, and there is very much the rule of don't mess with a winning lineup here, and that applies to playoff hockey too. We've seen it where even a couple of years ago, one of the best players on the Toronto Maple Leafs was suspended for a couple of games, removed from the suspension, doesn't get in the lineup for the first game that he's eligible because there is such a deep superstition to that ideology of messing with the winning lineup. And I'm curious if that is anything at all to you.
Yes, I believe in that, especially this time of year. I think you have to ignore a lot of, maybe 10,000-foot view planning. Right now, it's about the here and now. Blue Jays have a lot of players that are playing really, really well. Bo Bichette's one of the best players they've ever had, but he hasn't played since September 6th. Cage reps are not the same as real reps. This is the highest level. He's facing the best pitchers right now. I'd rather have a targeted at bat for him, and I'd love to have him a part of it for the spiritual, for the morale for the boys. I mean, they're going to love having him as an option, but I would be very resistant to just play him just because he's Bo Bichette. I would play him if I felt like that was really my best chance to win. But I'm with you. I get the hockey vibes here.
Yeah.
Definitely. Sometimes you got to play the hot hand, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think that for having him on the roster, that's actually kind of an easier decision to make because what you're sacrificing is Joey Loperfido, who's basically there to be. He didn't play. Yeah, he didn't play, and he's there to be like a pinch run option. And maybe from, like, it's almost the same thing as Bo, where Bo would be a pinch hit option. Loperfido would be maybe a pinch hit option against a righty late in the game, but even then, I don't even know for certain, but more likely than anything, a pinch run. So if you're just saying like those are depth bench pieces and neither one of them's playing, I think that there's probably more added value in Bichette being able to come in and have a moment for you in a leverage spot as a pinch hit than there is with Loperfido. So I think that's an easier one. The other piece of this, though, is the Springer stuff, which is like if you are at a point where you feel like, hey, Bo maybe is actually going to get a game and he is going to be in the DH spot. Did you see, like, it's harder, like, Springer he looked compromised, which was part of the insane thing about that home run is he wasn't looking like himself at the plate since he wore that knee, baseball on the knee. And when you're asking guys to change their roles at this point of the season, how impactful that actually is. Again, one of the best postseason performers of all time, a veteran, 36 years old, you would think he would adapt to that easier than maybe others would. But where are you at in terms of being able to make that decision?
Yeah, I would have no problem playing him in the outfield if that's the route you're choosing to go and you want to get Bo the 4 at-bats. That's the route. You DH him. No way Bo's playing the field for me.
Yeah.
And then I would play George out there. Look, you had Santander out there, so you're willing to have a compromised outfield situation for a bat. And George, the injury's weird because it's a pain thing. He got smoked in the kneecap, basically, right? Like, that's just a pain thing. So that gets a little better every day, but you get it moving around, you get it heated up, you're in the outfield, it's the World Series. I think he'll be okay. I do. He used to be a great outfielder. He has it in him, at least. So I wouldn't be terribly upset if I saw him out there. But the only reason you'd be doing it is because you're convinced that there's a matchup that you need Bo to get 4 at-bats in.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, he looked pretty good running the bases.
By the way, he jumped up and down like
Yeah.
nothing happened
Yeah.
for a while. So adrenaline and euphoria is a nice drug as well.
Yeah, I you know what though, I did have it, when I was not in the moment, because in the moment I was in the stadium and I was just jumping up and down, hugging people and having the best time of my life. I didn't even really see him round the bases, but on the millionth watch of that highlight, I did think like, man, you were jumping up and down. Like, what a awful way this could have got. Like, this felt little Kendrys Morales-ish, where you're celebrating so hard for this moment and you're on a hurt knee. Maybe chill out a little bit. Okay, last one from me. Do you see the Jays, because obviously the Dodgers are favorites. They're World Series champions. They've got this incredibly deep roster. They're not the Mariners, where it's going to feel like there's the same let-up spot at the bottom of the order as I think it did in the last series. Their bullpen, clearly not great, but the Blue Jays bullpen has question marks of their own. The starting pitching, they've got the best starting pitching in the postseason right now. Do you see I know you mentioned that the Jays are hot, but do you see them having an actual advantage in this series anywhere?
I don't know. No, not really. Not particularly in any one unit. Maybe the bottom of the order, the way they've been performing. Dodger bottom of the order is not bad either, but I typically I like the fact that history tells us it's better to be the team that played the 7-game series than the team that just swept. That has been very favorable to the team that has been playing more baseball. So I love that for the Jays. And I give the Jays a chance. They're a scrappy team. In a way, they have a 2015 Royals vibe to me. They could be the team that takes down the team with the good pitching. That's I could see them doing it. So I'm not saying this is an overwhelming slam dunk. Dodgers will win this thing. Obviously, the Dodgers are the favorite. But I think, and I'm hoping, obviously, but I'm thinking as well, it should be a pretty fun series.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same way, too. Anything to the idea that the Blue Jays having faced more adversity and the Dodgers kind of being on cruise control, and also the Blue Jays coming into this with the nobody believes in us factor?
Totally. And the Blue Jay bullpen, I mean, the Dodger bullpen has not been tested that much. They had the one tight game versus the Phillies that Sasaki somehow threw 3 innings in.
Yeah.
But those were all 3 clean innings. He hasn't had a lot of fast runners, hit and run situations, bunting, like all these things that come into play against a guy like him. Trinin's been up and down. Vesey is not even playing right now. Yeah. Something unfortunate's going on there. So honestly, like I said, if they can get through the starters and just make the relievers get outs for the Dodgers, I think the scale tips big time really quickly back towards the Jays. And I love that. And I love that nobody believes in us as well. I mean, of course, you want to be on that side of it. It's much easier to be a hunter than a hunted. Yep. Dodgers are they don't really know. They haven't felt it yet. So they need to get punched in the face, and maybe the Jays are the team to do that.
I was going to say, they didn't even know that they're in the playoffs. Like, that Reds game certainly didn't feel like the postseason. It just felt like, game 73 of the regular season. Again, Adam Ottavino, 15 years in the majors. And again, host of Baseball and Coffee. You can find it on YouTube. There's a World Series preview today. It is absolutely must watch. Thanks again for making time, man. I always appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll be at the game tonight. So
nice.
It should be exciting.
Welcome to our beautiful city. We'll see you there, man.
Thank you. All right, have a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. One of my favorite things about all of this is the energy that's going to be around the city, that you're going to feel downtown, that you're going to feel in the bars, that you're going to feel in the stadium, the excitement, the buildup. It's going to be a party. It's going to be an absolute riot. And my hope is that the Blue Jays, listen, I don't think that they can win this series if they drop the first 2 games. But part of me wonders, can they get the first 2? Can they go to Dodger Stadium with a 2-0 lead? And what does it look like downtown when they win a World Series game? It's on a weekend. This is going to be a very fun weekend in the city of Toronto. There's obviously a doomsday scenario that ends up happening, but I think it's going to be pretty euphoric. And not to diminish the Blue Jays' chances, because I believe they're going to win this series. I do. I think that they're going to win in 6 games. I think that they're going to find a way, and that they're going to shock the world a little bit. There's some stuff in there that Adam mentioned that I really do believe in, which is Toronto, if they can force the issue, press the issue against this starting pitching. I like the way that they're going to line up against the Dodgers bullpen. And now with the addition of Bassett, with Fluharty pitching the way he has been, the way that you feel more comfortable with your closer and Jeff Hoffman. I think it adds a little bit of something to it. And yeah, they're just a confident team that's used to getting doubted, and that this is kind of like nowhere you'd rather be stuff. But to me, part of the reason why this is so enjoyable is, as I've said all year long, no one really expected the Toronto Blue Jays to be playing in a World Series. And there were multiple moments where that doubt really got raised throughout the postseason and at the very end of the regular season. And so the celebration of being here is absolutely a thing. And I don't view that as loser mentality. I view that as something that is great to have. You should be stoked that they're here. And winning the World Series is, of course, the ultimate goal. And I've gotten tons of messages from people, well, job's not finished, job's not done yet. But just enjoy it, like soak it in. Soak in being around the city. Like, I can't wait. I'm going Saturday with my friends at Labatt, my friend Veronica Bart helping me out. I'm taking it all in. I'm going to have that extra beer. I'm going early. The Clydesdales are in town. The Budweiser Clydesdales. I'm going to see them. I think they're at the CN Tower like 6 to 8 tonight. I'm going to be taking every activity in that I possibly can, soaking up the moment, because I know as a sports fan that this is what everything is for. All of the crappy games that you watch, all of the nights where you doubt your team. How many times as a sports fan have you told yourself, like, why do I do this to myself? And then you get to a moment like this and you say, oh, right, because this feels like nothing else. This is truly the best thing. God, it's so good. The shared experience of it all, being able to, again, go out with friends, whether it's in a bar, whether it's a basement, whether it's at the stadium, and share something that you know is going to be a core memory, something that bridges generational divides. You can talk to your parents and your grandparents, whatever, your kids, and share the same level of excitement about this thing as anybody. So soak it in. Enjoy it. Go see the Clydesdales. Quick break. We'll come back and close up. So yeah, the best revenge is living well. So if you want revenge on Shohei Ohtani, beat him. I mean, you win this series, he's got to wonder, what would it have been like playing here? Wow, look at this crowd. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten robbed by my interpreter. Maybe whatever group I would have had around me in Toronto, like, again, sliding doors, could have saved a lot of money, although it seems pretty clear he's not a huge carer of money. So yeah, here, before we wrap up, you know, I like to do my couple of keys. Pretty straightforward. Get Blake Snell out by the 6th inning. You need to have some length in this series where you're facing the Dodgers bullpen, and that's going to apply throughout the series. But I think it's especially important tonight against the lefty. Snell has dominated this team. He's as nails as it gets. But I like the lineup that the Blue Jays can deploy against him. I'm very curious to see what Bo Bichette's role is. After talking to Adam, it feels even more like he's a DH bat. But what does it look like for you in terms of pitcher versus pitcher and who ends up with the length tonight? Because if the Toronto Blue Jays can have their starter in there longer than the LA Dodgers, I think the Toronto Blue Jays are taking game 1. Subscribe to this podcast. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. And I'll see you down at the ballpark this weekend.